Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Now, although it really is authentic to go to Boise, to go to the trouble, to go in court, and I will be in court again on Monday. I think it's for trial day 9. Although that counts for something, there's still kind of a secret that is sort of withstanding our efforts to prosecute this case, to understand this case, to figure out Laurie Vallow. And that secret is what were the real family dynamics? Who is Laurie Vallow really? And what is the source of her foundational beliefs? Where did they really come from? And I think it's easy to say that Laurie simply met Chad and then took things from there. And that is actually not the reality. Chad's beliefs resonated with Laurie for some reason. Why was that? And we're going to deal with that in this episode. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. I must say I'm quite disappointed that I've got less than 10,000 views on the very last video. When that is the case, it's really not worth my while to continue deep diving. So, so obviously if that continues to be the case, I'm not going to continue covering the case. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So, an excellent article appeared recently in The Independent dealing with Laurie's cousin, Megan Aiden. And it's really amazing to think about this idea that Laurie and her family are the focal point of, for example, the murder of Charles Vallow, right? And then the family on the side, by hook or by crook, for whatever reason, end up just not saying anything. They may be conflicted, there may be a disagreement, they may not all feel the same way, but ultimately you never hear them participating in the media narrative. One of their own brothers, relatives, uncles, whatever, is shot, it makes, it makes national news, and then they've got nothing to say. And then, of course, a long time goes by, and eventually they speak. And so, at last, are we going to get some idea about who Laurie really is from the inside, right? And so, Ms. Aiden, she revealed that family tension, and this is besides tension in Laurie's family, this is tension in the extended family, that this tension arose 2 months before the children vanished in Idaho, right? And it's when Miss Vallow's fourth husband, Charles, was shot by her brother. Now, according to the article, although police, and we know this, initially ruled that Cox acted in self-defense, Laurie's brother acted in self-defense, they've since ruled Charles's death was a murder conspiracy. And so Laurie's facing charges for his death separate from the Idaho trial, right, while Cox died in December 2019. So Laurie's actually facing charges of triple murder and then charges on his death as well. In any event, some members of the family suspected something was wrong from the start. That's according to Laurie's cousin. And so the question is, why didn't you say anything? If you did say something, could that not have slowed down what was taking place? Could that not have caused a sense of, second guessing what someone was doing, rather than, oh, I did something, no one asked any questions, whatever I said was taken at face value, right? And so anyway, what she says is the following. She says, quote, "All I can tell you is that for sure there was a rip in the family when Charles was killed. There was part of the family that believed that Alex acted in self-defense, and there was another part of the family that believes that he did not. And that definitely was a separation in our family." And she says, and I think that sort of continues somewhat today. But the impression you kind of get is that the family can't agree, but ultimately the bottom line whatever their position, is that it ends up being swept under the carpet. It ends up not really being confronted. It ends up with a situation that Laurie isn't confronted, right? So can you see that you sort of get the idea that the family maintain an omerta of sorts, right? Kind of a pact of silence. Laurie was allegedly effectively given the green light to continue as a result of that. No matter what you say, no matter whether you say maybe someone didn't like what happened or criticized, whatever it was, wasn't enough, because effectively the green light was given and more people died. Tylee disappears, same thing. No one really says anything. JJ disappears. No one really says anything. Everyone's sort of waiting for Laurie to say something. When she says something, let's wait and see. And so you kind of get the sense that you're dealing with a family that don't confront things, and that also seem to hide things away. And so the bottom line is, because Laurie wasn't confronted by anyone, it created the impression, and maybe you should ask her, didn't she have the impression that she was off the hook? And didn't that suggest that she had a license, possibly, to continue whatever she was doing? In any event, Laurie's cousin said that she still struggles with the idea that if her immediate family had been willing to hold Laurie accountable, had just called her and spoken to her and demanded an explanation, and also held her brother accountable and asked him for an explanation, the kids might still be alive. If they were constantly in their face, what happened here, and actually seeing them in person and not letting it go, then the children would still be alive. There wouldn't be opportunity, there wouldn't be space for that other activity to possibly take place. And so what's quite interesting is that Laurie's other brother, Adam Cox, so there's Alex Cox, there's also Adam Cox, he apparently fought hard to find the truth about what happened to Charles. And then guess what? She said the family ripped Adam apart because they wanted to protect Alex and Laurie from consequences. And so the question then arises, where does this idea of protecting from consequences come from? Well, guess what? It does come from somewhere. It's not just comes out of thin air. And then she says, I think that's the crux of where all of this comes down to. Nobody wanted to hold Laurie and Alex accountable. And so where does that psychology come from? And I think this is very interesting. A lot of people seem to think this is not a very sexy case. If it's not in the media, it's not worth covering. I think it's one of the worst cases I've ever dealt with in terms of seriousness. But I also think it holds fascinating insight for the way we as members of families, we who are part of a culture in a family, consent or in some way participate in the way that families tend to deal with issues. Right? And so this is what it's all about. We're getting a fascinating insight into Laurie's confidence when it came to dealing with the law. It's not all just a confidence trick. It's not all charm and personality. It actually derives from somewhere else. Where does it derive from? Who does it derive from? Well, guess who it is? Laurie's cousin, Ms. Aiden, she's shared her belief in that article. I'll put a link to it in the description, that the most powerful influence in Laurie's life wasn't her mother, it was her father, Barry Cox. And so she said the following, by all accounts and from my own experience, I can tell you that, Laurie's dad has been a big factor in her personality and in the way that she turned out. Anybody who has dug into his history will tell you that he definitely believed he was above the law. And those words just really say it all, that her father believed he was above the law. And so it's one thing to say that, okay, so he thought he was above the law. So when Laurie is confronted by reporters and she's in court and it's all a big joke, then she's used to that idea, well, being above the law isn't really that strange. My family's been above the law all the time anyway. It's all just a game, right? But I think the part that sort of gets interesting is when you say, how, in what way did he believe he was above the law? Practically speaking, what do we actually mean when we say that? And so Barry Cox, according to Laurie's cousin, said that Laurie's father even ended up serving prison time for tax evasion after trying to sue the IRS. And then she said the following, and this is where it really hits you, like a punch to the gut, what we're really talking about here. Laurie's cousin said, quote, "I think the most pervasive thing that ran throughout the family system was this concept that Barry talked about, he called the lower 95, where he believed that 95% of the population are stupid, sheep, and unattractive people." That's huge. That's not a common belief held by the average family. And so, in other words, Barry has contempt for his fellow man. Barry has contempt for the government. Barry has contempt for society. Barry thinks he's special. Barry thinks he's should get special treatment. And so when Laurie is told she's a god, it actually just resonates with all of that gobbledygook in the first place. Oh yeah, I thought I was special anyway. But do you realize how special you are? Oh no, that does make sense. And so this is the bottom line. Laurie's cousin said, quote, "He and his family," this was their belief, "are in the upper 5% who are smarter than everyone, more intelligent, more exceptional, and more beautiful." And this is the bottom line. This plays into a lot of Laurie's personality. And so when you're sitting in court and you see her, to some extent, looking at the jury, but to some extent almost ignoring them, to some extent, whenever a session has been concluded, she tends to smile in a way, like someone has testified, a friend has testified, or an ex-friend has testified, an officer has testified. You kind of get the sense that she smiles to her lawyers almost as a way of dismissing that, as to say, that's so silly, and in the sense that, well, I'm more important and you not. I'm part of the chosen few that's above the law and you not. And so none of this is applying to me or is going to apply to me. Well, do you think she's right? And so does that make it a little bit clearer that she's not crazy? She's actually simply inheriting a kind of a default setting and applying it within a particular religious system. And the whole 144,000 is the same thing, where, you're trying to recruit sheep, in a sense, and then those are the special sheep in lieu of the rest of the world that are the zombies, which are an even worse and even more inferior kind of sheep. But I think there's another aspect that we also want to deal with, and I'll do that in a analysis following this one, which is there another example of lack of accountability where somebody dies and there's kind of an omerta? And the answer, astonishingly, disturbingly, is yes. I'll be dealing with that in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.
What makes you tick? Being a good mom is very important to me, and a good wife, and a good worker, and being all those things together is not easy. So I'm basically a ticking time bomb.